As populism and extremism gains momentum in Europe, the relevance of liberalism is being challenged. However, many still argue that this remains the most viable political solution for navigating today's complex political landscape. Now, Zoltán Ranschburg, a senior analyst at the Republikon Institute and a seasoned expert in public policy, has been involved in anti-corruption, transparency, and human rights work, offering a fresh perspective on revitalizing liberalism. Today, we're going to discuss the ideas that he shared with us on the panel of how do we make liberalism sexy again. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, and thank you very much for having me.
So before we dive into how to make liberalism sexy, we need to, I think, first start from how is it kind of losing a little bit of relevance. At some point, I remember liberalism used to be the hottest thing on the block. That's what all the hip kids are into. What happened?
Well, there are many aspects to this. I think the first and probably the most important is that liberalism has become mainstream. Although we don't necessarily see it in the rise of liberal parties, but liberalism and liberal values, liberal ideas have become parts of mainstream European politics. And frankly, they have become so deeply involved in the very fabric of our modern societies in the 21st century, especially in the global north, that we tend to forget about their liberal roots, and we tend to forget how important they are, and we just take them for granted. And I think this is one of the main reasons why there are so many illiberal tendencies rising, that people are starting to forget the necessity of these values, the presence of these liberal ideas in our everyday lives and politics.
Right, I do see, well, when something becomes kind of a staple, people tend to kind of take a microscopic approach at pointing out the flaws and kind of the grass greener on the other side situation. So in your panel, what did you discuss about like trying to revitalize, kind of reintroduce this enthusiasm in the younger generation?
Well, I would raise 2 points here. The first is that it has to be, the consciousness has to be raised about the importance of these values, which, as I mentioned, are more and more taken for granted. People have to be reminded that without these values, they would not have the freedoms and civil liberties that we all enjoy so much, that these are actually the only real guarantee for these values and ideas and principles is liberalism. So this is for the first thing. And connected to this, I would also raise the issue of the word liberal having been turned into a swear word in many countries, like in Hungary, where I come from. A populist, a liberal regime has actively and deliberately turned the term liberal into a swear word. And many political actors, even though they have liberal ideas, even though they represent liberal political ideologies, they don't dare to label themselves as such. They try to avoid the word because it's toxic if you're talking about politics. So I think it's very important to reinstate the status of the term liberal, to make it sexy again, or make it attractive again for those who believe in these values.
Yeah, perhaps sometimes in a very polarized world, words can be kind of distorted. Now, you mentioned based in Hungary yourself, and I'm hoping to draw some lessons from there, where liberalism has faced significant political setbacks. Can you help us draw some of the comparisons, some of the lessons from Hungary, perhaps what it's going through right now, and well, how to strengthen its appeal in other European countries?
Well, about the Hungarian example, I'm sure I don't want to go through all the issues and all the problems of the liberal democracy in Hungary, because I guess our viewers are interested in politics. That's why they're following us. And if you're interested in politics, especially in European or Eastern European politics, you must have witnessed all through the last almost 15 years what Hungary has been going through. So there have been many challenges posed to the freedom of the press, to judicial independence. There have been challenges to the checks and balances, and Hungary has long been in a state of state capture. So these are huge issues that we have to be dealing with sooner or later. But if you allow me just to pick one issue, which is less and less often discussed, even in Hungarian public discourse, is the issue of the Roma minority. They are a gigantic minority in Hungary. We're talking about hundreds of thousands or probably 1 million people. And I remember back in the 90s when I was growing up, this was a regular topic of daily politics. How to support those communities which live in extreme poverty, most of them Roma communities. And the entire topic has just got lost. And for roughly 15 years, we haven't even spoken about the issue. And I believe that for someone who is liberal and who appreciates the liberal part of liberal democracies, the protection of the rights of minorities and of those who are not possessing political power or enough political representation is absolutely key, and it should be a priority. So these are all issues that we will have to face once we get rid of the Orbán regime.
Right. Looking at recent elections across Europe, we've seen, France, Germany, liberalism seems to be put on their back foot. There's a little bit of receding when it comes to popularity, and there's a cropping up of these more popularistic parties. Do you see that as a trend going forward, or do you think it's most likely just a blip on the radar?
You mean populism in general? Well, populism or popularism is not a political ideology. It's a tool. It's the simplification of political messages into the level where they are virtually meaningless, but they can be very, very attractive to the voters. I think the greatest challenge, not only for liberalism, but for every conscious political ideology, or for every political actor who are actually conscious about what they're doing and who feel the responsibility of delivering proper and meaningful policies to their voters and to the people in general, is to overcome the challenge of communicating in a way that is simplified and not really nuanced and doesn't speak about the very details of policies and policy making, but behind that communications narrative, there is still legitimate and valuable and comprehensive content of policy. So I think that is very important. So I believe it's not the communications level that has to be changed, or of course many changes should be made to political communications, but the most important is what's behind all this, and that should be improved.
Do you think the increased polarized society across, well, not just Europe, but also in the United States or everywhere across the world, this kind of very polarized political climate makes it so that it's very hard to have a nuanced discussion without devolving into kind of shouting back and forth, which perhaps give rise to these easy to consume kind of using more slogans than actual contentful discussions?
Well, I think it's a two-way street. They both affect each other. So the simpler the message, the easier it is to get political support, and the more political support one gets with a simple message, the more incentive they have to use these simple messages. So it works both ways, and there that of course leads to further polarization, because people are very easily divided if they are presented with ideas that are presented either good or bad. Right. And when you don't really see the middle grounds, and it's very easy to get drifted either to this side or to the other.
Right, and I think it is human nature to try to look for the path of least resistance, and it is very easy to instinctively try to fall into kind of easier to consume type of material. Do you think there's any way that this course could be reversed?
I think this is the most important question of contemporary politics, to be honest, and I don't have a simple answer to that, because it would be great if I could say that yes, sure, people have to be given more complex answers. Politicians have to be, and political actors in general have to be much more conscious about explaining things to their voters. That in and of
itself will be an oversimplification of the matter, right?
That would be wonderful. However, they would instantly realize that their political goals are much more effectively or more efficiently served by simpler messages, so we would get back to where we are at the moment. So I don't really have a settling answer to your question. I can only really hope that even if the messages, as I mentioned before, even if the messages are not as complex as they should probably be in an ideal world, at least they have the real policy background that makes the policies that are derived from these ideas useful, feasible, and beneficial for the society.
Right, and well, when it comes to liberalism and the new age, this conference is called Europe City Future, and I'm also wondering about technology, because I think social media, the prevalence of AI, and messages being able to spread across the world in such a kind of hypersonic speed, do you think that's going to exacerbate the issue of these easier to consume message being passed around?
Absolutely. The only thing I would argue with is the future tense, because it's already happening. I mean, it's making these sort of messages much more easier to convey to a much larger audience. If we look at political messaging from 20 years ago, like even the shortest political advertisements that went on television were at least a couple of minutes long, but now we are operating with a couple of seconds long videos on TikTok, Instagram, or whatever, Facebook. Or Facebook is, I guess it's.
Yeah,
I'm just too old for that. Yeah. So absolutely, this definitely contributes to the further simplification of political messaging, and as a consequence to further polarization, especially due to the algorithms that decide what political message reaches you as the end user. It creates these bubbles and echo chambers that are actually exacerbating the whole problem. Yes, it's there. I guess that certain levels of regulations can help this, but I again, this is an issue that I cannot give you one answer that this is how it will be resolved in the future. So we will all be happy because this is how we can manage this. Unfortunately, it's not that easy.
No, definitely. But this does showcase how much nuance is needed in our current day political discussion, and that is such a good demonstration of it. Thank you so much for your input and insight.
Thank you very
really
much
appreciate
for
it.
having me. Thank you.
And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks here on TVP World. For more news and update, please stay tuned.